I'm sure they can hardly stand the tension. I know I can't. And there it is, Manchester City are the champions.
Manchester City didn't just sprout up out of nothing in 2008 when they got a bit of cash in their bank balance. They were actually a big club way before that, and this is how they were built, under the management of Joe Mercer and Malcolm Allison.
Alright, here's the 4-1-1, folks.
Quick history of Manchester City, let's go. The club got their first shot in the arm not by a sheikh but by their latest captain, Billy Meredith, who almost led the Blues to the first League and Cup double of 20th century English football in 1904. Having never previously gotten past round 2 of the FA Cup, they went all the way, dispatching of Bolton in the final. That, coupled with a silver medal in the league, made City the most sought-after football club in Britain. Temporarily. A lack of success in the intervening generation created a stagnant club only revitalised in 1923 with the move from their ground at Hyde Road and into a plot of land in South Manchester that would quickly become known as Main Road. Either side of the Second World War, City developed the positive habit of recoiling immediately from cup heartache at Wembley. In the 1930s, they rebounded from a 3-0 defeat against Everton in the 33 final by simply coming back the following year to beat Portsmouth under the management of Wilf Wilde. A generation on, with Les McDowell now shepherding the team from the sideline, they would appear at Wembley again in the 1955 final, famously losing the tie but quickly rebounding to claim the cup 12 months later against Birmingham City. Yes, that final of Bert Trautmann fame, where the German keeper broke his neck and City lifted silverware again. Les McDowell's time, though, would come to an end with the club's relegation in 1963. He hadn't got with the new wave of coaches that English football now provided. City needed to modernise, so what did they do? They promoted from within, as McDowell's assistant George Poyser was hired ahead of the 1963-64 season. Normally it would be prudent for the club's long lineage to stay in-house. In 1963 the club needed something different, so it was no surprise that City floundered in the second division under Poyser. After the 6th place in 1964 came the ultimate indignity of simply being furniture the following campaign, finishing 11th with more losses than wins. With the fans turning away in their droves, only 8,015 turned up to Main Road in the defeat to Swindon, so City bit the bullet that Easter. They hired Joe Mercer, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions the club had ever made. From Merseyside, Mercer had won the First Division title with Everton before moving south to Arsenal to do so again, twice more. Mercer got his managerial experience first at Sheffield United, where he couldn't stave off relegation for the Blades, and then at Aston Villa, where he led a bold and attacking blueprint that claimed promotion and the first edition of the League Cup. Such an undertaking had encroached on Mercer's health, and by the mid-60s he was forced to take a year out of the game. Refreshed and rebalanced, Manchester City were the ones profiting. To ease the strain, Mercer needed a young and hungry coach to share the workload, so he got hold of former West Ham player Malcolm Allison, who he had met at a few FA coaching sessions. From there, the pair and the club hit it off. First came promotion to the top flight in the duo's first campaign at Main Road, waltzing to the big time ahead of Southampton, Coventry and Huddersfield. Teamed with a good run to the FA Cup quarter-final, where Everton needed 3 games to dispatch of them, City were in good stead for a berth back into the First Division. The subsequent years saw a return to the same stage in the Cup, only bowing out to Don Revie's Leeds United. They proved they were back where they belonged right from the off, sinking the reigning champions of England, Bill Shankly's Liverpool, 2-1 in their first home game back. And whilst the form remained a touch inconsistent, City built a firm foundation for themselves.
And 4.
Aldrich putting the visitors ahead, but Bluebird skipper Gareth Williams pulling one back to level the score.
Big names like Leeds and Everton also fell as City went some way to avenging their prior cup eliminations. And whilst the history books will note City's 15th place finish in their first season back, there was plenty of optimism ahead of the 67-68 campaign, although nobody would have been able to tell you just how well it would go. The campaign started in bunches and not particularly well as they returned from trips to both Southampton and Stoke empty-handed after a goalless draw at home to Liverpool. When City did retrieve both points from a game, they went on quite the run, sinking the likes of Southampton, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle United, Coventry City and Sheffield United. But quickly, they found themselves on the wrong end of the result just as quickly at Highbury, guttingly at home in the derby and at Roker Park. They were the dictionary definition of streaky, and that came as a positive in the build-up to the visit of Tottenham Hotspur at the beginning of December. The highlights were dispatching of Don Revie's Leeds by a goal to end October, a 6-goal thrashing of Leicester City on Remembrance Day whilst Foz was stuck beyond both Fulham and Burnley. It left a pretty crucial tie against 5th place Spurs safe in the knowledge that a win would put clear daylight between the two. And not only that, they'd go level on points with United after 20 matches.
Venables, Greaves, and it's 1-0 for Tottenham. Sowerby, Lee, Mallory, Bell, the Sowerby, Mallory, goal, a lovely goal by Sowerby. Great football, and it's in the post to goal, Coleman. The chance for Bell, and the goal by number 10, Young.
City had inched closer to their neighbours, with Spurs still cast aside in 5th, and soon enough Europe would return to distract United again to make the title race interesting. Combined with not much to shout about in the cup competitions, going down thanks to the odd goal in 7 against Leicester in the FA Cup and early in the League Cup against Fulham, City were fresh entering the second half of the campaign. In fact, they dropped just 1 point in the first 7 fixtures of 1968, sticking 3 beyond Forest, Sheffield United and Coventry, winning by the odd goal in successive rounds against Sunderland and Burnley before humbling Fulham 5-1. The only blemish was an acceptable one, a draw at home to Bertie Mee's Arsenal. The Manchester clubs were officially embroiled in a title race. 11 matches remained and the pair could not be split. Furthermore, Revie's Leeds and Shankly's Liverpool were the calibre of teams breathing down their neck. What a time to be alive and witnessing English football. Also, what a time to be travelling across to the Pennines to meet Leeds with a potential chance of eliminating a title rival. Shuttling down to 3rd, City's title fate was still in their own hands, particularly ahead of a perfect chance to retaliate at Old Trafford. Shockingly, there's no footage of the game available online, so you just have to trust me that George Heslop, Francis Lee and Colin Bell were the heroes of the day as City stuck a spanner in the United's title bid with a 3-1 win. United had a Wembley date on their hands, not in the FA Cup but against Benfica, with a chance of becoming England's first ever European champions. City, however, still had a chance of making a dent in their season thanks to 3 won on the spin ahead of the final day. First, an own goal sunk Sheffield Wednesday when they visited Main Road on April 25th. On the other side of the weekend, Tony Buck got the ball rolling in a 2-0 triumph over the 63 champions Everton, which left City needing another win in their penultimate game to keep them in the driving seat ahead of a final day trip up to St James's Park and Newcastle. Their opponents could barely have been harder, Tottenham Hotspur, the reigning cup champions who were still under the control of Bill Nicholson. Colin Bell's double and another from Mike Summerby capped off one of the season's finer afternoons as City led United going into the final day. Both Manchester clubs level on points. United played Sunderland and City needed to equal their neighbours' result to win the league. Now that sounds familiar.
There you now, to Doyle, and there it is, there's the first goal. Mike Summerby has scored. In position, and here comes Brian Robson. It's a goal. Tanya shot through, and there it is. There's the second one. In his waist, he is really quick. And there is the equaliser. Well set in that. And this must be it. There it is. There's Lee. There's Lee. He's not offside. He's scored. Brian Robson. He's got it, and he's crossed it. It's a great chance. And there is a goal.
By Garling, and a
could have scored within the first half minute.
Keane is up there as well. It goes to Keane. It goes to Bridges. A goal! A goal!
It was quickly apparent that the title was not going to be defended, admittedly in a time where it didn't get defended between 1959 and 1977. But unlike names such as Man United, Leeds, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs and even Derby County, who had become besotted with a European Cup, that would not be a pleasure City would have for too long.
And against the field for penalty, it is Young, and it hits me right on the line. Young for Manchester City.
Sokakta sert bir şut gol. O gün vurdu bunu Paris'i ve Koymun'un işte çok kötü bir dakika bu. Olmak üzere oldu. Evet 46. dakikada Abdullah beraberliği kaydetti. Sağ taraftan yapılan ortaya Abdullah tam ceza çizgisi üzerinde yakaladı.
This gallingly after Malcolm Allison sent out the rallying cry that the club would terrify all of Europe. Apparently this news hadn't reached as far as Istanbul and Fenerbahce. There was one thing City could rely on though, the FA Cup, after they were safe in the knowledge of a drab mid-table finish. Whilst they could still put on a show, as the likes of West Brom and Burnley found out in the build-up to Christmas, as they shipped 12 goals between them across 2 games, typically they could frustrate in equal measure when City turned up to those same Burnley and West Brom sides and got beat at Turf Moor and the Hawthorns respectively in the spring. So by January, City were now living for the cup outings. The 1969 cup run all began with a lumbering home win to third-tier Luton Town, a match won 1-0 by Francis Lee. The fourth round provided a trip to Newcastle United and St James's, a ground in which the title had been sewn up 7 months prior. The welcome return of captain Tony Buck aided City ahead of a replay won by 2 goals. It was the second of 4 cup games in a row. Due to poor weather, much of the league competition was abandoned, and when football resumed, City sunk second-tier Blackburn 4-1 and dispatched of the cup team of their day, Spurs, in the quarter-final. After securing bragging rights over a United team distracted by a semi-final themselves in the European Cup, City were posted away to Villa Park for the semi-final of the FA Cup against Everton.
Here comes the corner. Doyle going for it. Summerby! Booth! A goal!
35 days separated semi-final from final, and yet the destruction left behind by the wintry months of January and February ensured that City had 8 league fixtures to cram in. With such a quick turnaround of a high fixture volume, it was no surprise that City were inconsistent, winning only 3 and losing 5 of these fixtures. Whilst they would wind up in 13th, nobody cared. The trip down to Wembley was all the fans wanted to know about. Their opponents, Leicester City, a team who had yet to win the cup and were in their 3rd attempt that decade to win the final, a team that had traded wins with City in the league that year.
Summerby moved inside. It's Willett with him. Summerby back to Young. It's there! Scored by Young. Made by Summerby.
It was about time City kicked on and challenged for the league again. Their early season form stated otherwise. First, they were beaten by Don Revy's Leeds in the Charity Shield, before a cruel fixture computer spat out the reigning champions of the Fairs Cup, Newcastle United at St James Park, and Bill Shankly's Liverpool, both home and away. City would lose all 3 fixtures. It'd take the club until October to turn their noses up, going 2 months unbeaten in the league throughout the entirety of October and most of November, a run that included this mesmeric performance at home to United.
And it's there! What a kick! Lee! Burns has come back to make the 4th one. Bell! And it's there! Fine goal by Bell! Lee in the middle. Warrior, own goal, and own goal by Sadler.
Unbelievably, that was City's first home win over United in the 60s at the last possible opportunity to have done so. A Christmas collapse of just 1 league win from 12 between November the 15th and February the 21st as 69 became 70 saw City tumble from 4th, already 8 points behind a great Harry Catterick Everton side, to 12th. As relegation was closer than any kind of title race, City was safe from either. In the midst of that run came a salivating FA Cup 4th round tie at Old Trafford and another chance to embarrass their neighbours.
And there it is! Booth, flag was up, Kidd! Nichols got the cup to cover. Oakes is in pursuit. It's in!
City were dumped out comprehensively from the FA Cup, however their season was far from over. We need to rewind to the autumn and to the League Cup, where City effectively won a heat of Masters football, remember that, beating others in the North-West. Considering that Southport is just about classed as Merseyside, the Blues eliminated not just the big two Merseyside giants but their northern minnows from the early rounds of the competition, and it left City one win away from a tantalising two-legged tie with United.
And it's there by Bell! At the moment, as you would expect, Bell going right through Bell! Number 2! Now this may come through to Francis Lee. Still Lee! And number 7, Summerby!
With QPR out of the way, the real competition could begin, a Manchester derby to provide a League Cup finalist. This was a United team that were there for the taking. Sir Matt Busby was gone, the empire soon to decay, and City had the chance to take the first wrecking ball to it.
Red shirts are bobbing around there. Bell! A goal! Colin Bell! Charlton coming up as well. And on the far side it's Aston. Straight into the path of Charlton! City this lead to take to the second leg. He has 2-1.
Wide is Shore. Goya. And the goal! Number 8, Ferreira. Forward for Edwards for back. Is it? Goya coming back with him. Best with his perfect balance. And then Edwards the goal! Oh no, he's not going to have a shot at goal. Oh, it's a goal by Summerby!
So City were Wembley bound once again, but it was precisely the first half of the story of City's great 1970. And that's because of the Cup Winners' Cup, a competition City occupied because of this incredible cup prowess. It had begun emphatically in Bilbao, a team from Manchester scoring 3 at San Mamés. Who would have thought it? This despite Tommy Booth's tonsillitis, this despite a journey from hell to Bilbao that involved multiple planes and multiple coaches just to get to the stadium. Unfortunately for City, the Spaniards hit 3 of their own in a pulsating match, which made things nervy coming back to Main Road for the second leg.
Trying one, and again! Flicking it through now for Summerby. And Irabon out very quickly, but straight to Young, he must score! Saved on the line, Bell! Foot of Neil Young, Bell in the middle, and it's there from Boya!
Belgian outfit Lierse were easier in the second round as City put 8 beyond them in a series of matches sadly not broadcast for television. Meanwhile, a trip out to Coimbra for the quarter-final in early March was a steely goalless draw, a mere 3 days out from the League Cup final. A League Cup final, of course, played out on a disgraceful piece of grass, ruined by the Horse of the Year show. Their opponents, West Brom, had been smashed 3-0 in a routine contest 5 weeks beforehand by City in a league game, but this is City, the final at Wembley. Never going to be easy.
As far as Ray Wilson. And here's another high one to look for Aston, going in! Summerby to flick it on in spite of the pain. And it's there! Leading well to get it over, Bell flicking it on, Pardo!
For the first time, the League Cup had come to the North-West. It meant more silverware in the pocket for the third successive season. A cup double became more of a reality 11 days later with a win over Academica at Main Road, courtesy of a Tony Towers strike. Preparations for a semi-final in Gelsenkirchen hit a snag with 3 defeats from 4 in the league. The one victory they did have in the build-up was another sweet piece of business against United.
Against Walker. Lee, and he scored. Lee waiting on the far wing, but Doyle bursting through here. Good goal! Good goal!
Aside from the goals scored by Mike Doyle and Francis Lee, City's form in front of goal had become rotten. They went down to Schalke 1-0, a score which would be replicated twice before the second leg. Even when they didn't lose, they still failed to score, being held at the Dell a week before Schalke were due to Main Road. With the club's first European final on the line, Manchester derby aside, City hadn't scored since they were hammered 5-1 at home to West Ham. And speaking of 5-1 at home, here's Schalke and a Cup Winners' Cup semi-final.
Forward and out. Is it Young? Oh, left foot! This is Doyle, Lee to his left. And Lee going straight in to Young. Bell! And the flick was just enough to go. Van Haren coming in. For Schmidt there. Earlhoff. In comes the Buda.
If Academica in the quarter-final was a surprising slog that was settled late in the day, City's fears that a similar tussle in the subsequent round after a defeat in West Germany were quickly put to one side in the second leg 2 weeks later. They had avoided Roma and Górnik Zabrze in the semi-final, and they would only be retrieved the latter Polish side for the final in Vienna after 3 draws and a coin toss. Criminally, as nearly 30 million people sat down all over Britain to watch a cup final between Chelsea and Leeds, played in Manchester no less, City supporters would only be able to see the game live if they were watching in the flesh.
He's trying to tee himself up. Good save by Koska. Young! Neil Young takes the penalty. The good fast bowler's run up. The rain absolutely teeming down. Was a bit lucky, the power took it through the legs. Hodkinson to take it. Bernstein, nice play by him. Ostislo! 2-1.
Manchester City had done it, not only becoming one of an exclusive band of British clubs to have won a European trophy, but they had become only the second English team to have won European and domestic silverware in the same campaign.
This is Alan Oakes. 20 minutes gone and it's... What a goal!
Oh, it's a beautiful goal! A great goal by O'Hare!
Man did very well there. Lee, his hat-trick! He can only push it away. Doyle, a beautiful goal!
Manchester City were embroiled in a civil war. Malcolm Allison was pushing for a takeover from double glazing merchant Joe Smith, and given he had made his fortune in windows, it was a pretty transparent attempt from Allison at a power grab. In the end, the football took a back seat. The League Cup was surrendered almost immediately away to Carlisle United in September. The Cup Winners' Cup a little later on in the day to the new winners to hail from England, Chelsea in the semi-finals, as City finished a pretty languid 11th place after all was said and done in the league. A few weeks into the subsequent 71-72 campaign, the power struggle was over and Malcolm Allison was announced as Manchester City's new manager. Before the turbulence of a managerial change altered City's season and perhaps their immediate future, the club had only faltered to defeat at home to Revy's Leeds and away to a decent Wolves outfit. While City struggled to early defeats in the Cup in such a competitive league, they were among the frontrunners through the autumn, the winter and indeed to the birth of spring.
And now Lee, hitting one across there, and it's there!
Very, very lucky.
Booth can't get there, but Lee might. Davis! Lee in the middle, and that's an own goal!
Francis Lee was banging in the goals, joined in that respect by Wyn Davies whilst Colin Bell was back from injury. It was a rise timed to absolute perfection, with Malcolm Allison being all but deified as the club entered spring. Bell put both goals beyond West Brom on the first day of March as Arsenal, Everton and Chelsea all joined them in falling to the mighty Blues. City were 5 clear of Derby, who admittedly had 2 games in hand, and a full 6 ahead of Leeds, who also had games in hand, 3. Then, as Malcolm Allison cycled downhill fast towards a trophy, he grabbed a branch from a nearby tree and stuck it in the spokes of his own wheels with the signing of Rodney Marsh. Malcolm Allison had craved Marsh for 2 full years but had faced pushback by Mercer. Now Allison had full control and, now leading the league, full trust from the board. £200,000 was spent on the frontman. The fluid partnership of Davies and Lee had the Marshy stodge crowbarred in as City failed to score up at Newcastle before falling to both Stoke and Southampton in April. And you could now throw a blanket over the top 4. 2 points splitting them, City were back in 3rd and still a realistic title challenger, but there was a lack of momentum. Of course they'd hit back and Rodney Marsh was at the heart of it to silence the doubters.
Well taken, under Lee! Oh, unlucky Francis Lee Marsh! Into the middle, so is Lee. Wyn Davies took it well on his chest. Marsh going in!
And when a trip to Old Trafford generated a second 3-1 triumph in 4 days, City maintained their place joint top with Brian Clough's Derby County. The interlaced nature of the fixture list would provide much of the drama for the remaining weeks of the season. While City would conclude their campaign on April the 22nd, the seasons of both Liverpool and Leeds wouldn't peter out until May the 8th. So as City floundered to a draw against Coventry on April 15th, both Liverpool and Derby twisted the knife in with more comfortable victories against West Ham and Huddersfield respectively. Then with a trip to Portman Road, a place City hadn't won at for an eon, their title bid was effectively torched with another negative result, a 2-1 defeat. With Derby the final visitors to Main Road that season, City needed a win and a whole host of results to go their way. In the end, the win was entirely worthless because of Liverpool's own triumph against Ipswich Town, something City had failed to do 4 days prior. City had finished their 42-game season top of the league, a point ahead of both Liverpool and Derby, but knew they couldn't win the championship. Derby's win over Liverpool in their final game saw to that, and whilst May the 8th saw both Liverpool and Leeds botch their attempts at overtaking Clough's side, Manchester City's players were already on their holidays, completely powerless to it all and on the outside. 1972-73 meant Manchester City without Joe Mercer at the club, not even from the boardroom level after he departed as general manager. Malcolm Allison now had what he had desired all along, total and complete control of Main Road. If Joe Mercer was a steadying handbrake, Allison was cutting the brakes with a grin dripping with charisma that told you not to worry. Not that the new chairman Peter Swales wasn't worried in the first place, he got Allison in place for what was supposed to be a fresh start in a new technical age. But it still meant a Manchester City playing in black and white. The club might have ludicrously qualified for and won the Charity Shield against the even more ludicrously qualified 3rd Division champions Aston Villa, but league form was utterly shocking. Of their first 6 matches, City chalked up just 2 points, thrashing Norwich from the comfort of their own home, and whilst the fixture list did throw up a stinker of Liverpool, Everton, Derby and Chelsea, City did slump to an away defeat against Crystal Palace. That was the defeat that left the club rooted to the bottom of the 1st Division, hardly a good look when the might of Valencia were creeping up on the horizon in the UEFA Cup first round. Obviously City would bow out to the Spaniards after a 2-1 defeat at the Mestalla second leg. By which point City's league form hadn't been corrected. Okay, there were home wins over Leicester and Spurs, but there was also the small matter of getting pumped 5-1 by Stoke 4 days before their European exit, or 4-1 at Birmingham in early September. A defeat to Coventry continued City's turgid form on the road. Yes, that's their 7th successive away reverse of the campaign. They wouldn't win on their travels until Remembrance Day, by which point the club form had picked up.
Down well and turned well, and it's in off the hands of the goalkeeper. Good shot. Still Donachie. Chance for him to shoot. And Lee leaving it for Marsh. Good save by Jennings. Marsh on again, England.
The club felt fun and free and fresh again. Losses evaporated in exchange for the present of victory at Christmas time and continued through to the FA Cup elimination of Liverpool in a 4th round replay. The problem was that it was all a bit temporary. Soon enough the form would dry up, Sunderland would eject them from the next stage of the Cup and go on to win it, and once their season was categorised as over, they laid down for Wolves at Molineux, shipping 5 goals before unforgivably losing 3 on the spin at Main Road. That was the end of Malcolm Allison and Manchester City, for now. But the fun times and crucially silverware weren't over just yet for Manchester City, but that's a story for another day. In the meantime, stay in the 1970s with this playlist.